Welcome to Grow Virtually, an online horticultural educational program presented by the Master Gardener Volunteers of Cobb County. Under the guidance of the University of Georgia Cooperative Extension Service, we grow gardeners.
We want to welcome you, and now I'd like to welcome our speaker, Master Gardener Michael Yarter.
Thank you, Gail, and welcome and good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Yarter, and I'll be your host tonight. I'm a Master Gardener Extension volunteer in Cobb County, and I've been a gardener for over 30 years, with the past 17 here in Cobb County. As Gail said, tonight's presentation is gardening on a slope and erosion control. Given the hilly nature of Cobb County, I expect many of you, like myself, have portions of your property with moderate to steep slopes and would like to make some changes. So I was interested in developing this presentation because, probably like you, I have faced the challenges of gardening on a slope. Understanding the problem or need and following time-tested techniques will hopefully help you turn an uphill challenge into a great gardening opportunity. Our goal today is to discuss ways that we can effectively manage your slope and erosion issues for a safer and more attractive yard. Does the photo on the left look similar to what you see on your slope? It does to me. It's similar to what I expect many of us will see in our yards or landscapes, and maybe not as bad. But this picture shows the starting point for the Prothers. The photo on the right, the after shot, is what I aspire to, and a sample of what the Prothers have been able to create. It's a fantastic example of what a plan, along with hard work, time, and dedication, can do to turn a slope into a garden oasis. As you can see, there are no signs of erosion or water flow issues in these photos. Why? Because the Prothers properly address the challenges of a slope. And this is what we're going to be discussing a little bit today. So, what do we mean by slope? Slope is simply a measure of steepness, or the angle at which the ground rises or falls. Steep slopes are defined as areas of land that have a slope greater than 20% in angle. This means a rise or fall of 2 feet for every 10 feet of length. Slopes present many unique challenges and potential safety issues, like a slip, trip, or fall. A sloping landscape is usually physically challenging. I know my back and knees are constantly fighting gravity and screaming at me and telling me it's time to go. Anyway, this becomes especially important as we get older and or are mobility challenged. Also, mowing on a slope can also be dangerous, as you have to be careful not to roll over or lose control of a mower. Gravity and slope creates an easy path for water to run, and if left unmanaged, may cause property damage to yards, buildings, driveways, and paths. Nature manages erosion issues by using vegetation to create a tight network of tree and shrub roots to bind the soil together. This network also absorbs and deflects water, which slows down runoff. If you don't have this vegetative network, it may be necessary to create one or install some permanent drainage channels to prevent further soil erosion. When planting trees or shrubs on a slope, you need to modify the general rule about planting because you want the plant to grow straight. You need to cover the roots and make sure it doesn't fall down the slope. So you need to dig the hole on the upper part of the slope and be sure your hole is about twice as wide as the container or the root ball. As you can see in the photo on the bottom, the uphill side of the root ball is even with the soil. This guideline prevents the tree from being planted too deep. Soil will then be added to the downhill side, you can see where the arrow is pointing, to cover the side of the root ball. Use the soil that you took from the top side and use that to cover the downside exposed part of the plant to create a flat surface around the plant. And tamp down and water slowly, then mulch. Mulching or maintaining a thick carpet of fallen leaves can help break the force of raindrops and prevent erosion from becoming severe. The process is, before you embark on any landscape project, there's a logical process that we have broken up into 5 basic steps for your consideration. This process is especially important when landscaping on a slope, as the terrain is more difficult to manage and the consequences of a mistake can be expensive. The 2 photos are examples of gardening on a slope at Burkhart Gardens in Victoria, Canada. I added this because I think it's more than any of us will ever likely create, but it's also nice to see at the extreme what's possible. So one of the things you want to do is when you're gardening on a slope is clarify expectations. As we said, it presents additional challenges on a slope because it can cause so many erosion problems and safety issues that need to be addressed. Once you decide to tackle the challenges, you'll make your choices or decisions based upon the need, the time, and of course your budget. Be realistic with yourself and capabilities. And there's a number of other questions you should ask. How hard will it be to do what you really want? Access. Can you move about easily and safety? That is usually the first thing I'm always looking for. The steeper the slope, the harder it is to work, as it takes more energy and effort to not slip or fall. And, how hard will it be to get materials up the slope? Another question is, how much time and effort are you willing to put in? Also to create and maintain what you've developed. And of course, budget. How much are you willing to spend? Of course, much will be determined by what you want done or need done, the cost of materials, or any professional services that you may need to contract out. Once you set realistic expectations, it's time to begin your site analysis and planning. On your site analysis, before you start, you obviously have to inspect the land. You should know it by now, but this is a good practice no matter where you are gardening. Your assessment begins by looking at the big picture. How large an area will you work? If it's a really large area, and it works even for a small manageable area, it helps me to modularize the whole into more manageable subportions. Orient yourself to the north and start considering a multitude of factors such as how much sunlight or shade? Is it an open or sunny location? Is there a lot of trees or shade? Or is there a mixture? As you see in the photo, there's a mixture of sun that will change throughout the day due to the trees and orientation. And we need to examine this and be conscious of it. The other question is, how steep of a slope? Is it moderate to gentle? Remember, water runs downhill and uncontrolled will cause issues. Drainage or soil erosion problems. Is there standing water or visible dampness? These issues are usually easy to identify. And what kind of soil are we working with? Is it the typical compacted clay soil that we know and love in Cobb County? Another question is, are water sources available, or will we need new spigots or hoses? That is a critical one. And what existing hardscapes will stay? What new hardscapes are needed? On a small slope like this one in the photo, a minor retaining wall or steps may be considered, and that's the starting point. So as we noted earlier, sunlight or lack of it will determine what varieties of plant and landscape options you will have. How much sun do I have? Well, observation, you'll need at least full sun is at least 6 hours per day. Many plants like flowering perennials, vegetables, annuals, and most fruit-bearing plants require a minimum of 6 hours in order to grow and develop properly. Partial sun or shade refers to plants that require 3 to 6 hours of sunlight per day and typically need relief from intense late afternoon sun here in our zone. Other considerations should be the changing environmental conditions, like tree growth or removals. These changes impact the amount of sun your landscape will get over time, or shade. You can get more specific information from UGA, Walter Reeves, and other local reputable sources for the sun requirements of plants that will grow in Georgia. We'll send you a link to a great publication, Landscape Plans for Georgia, that includes the sunlight requirements. Don't despair if your slope is a lot of largely shaded area. There's many native plants that will tolerate full to partial shade or even some partial sun. I hope none of these slides look familiar because if you do, I have empathy for you. Drainage on a slope is a critical component in a slope landscaping or gardening, as well as erosion control. As these photos make the point, soil erosion can become a huge problem when you garden on a slope. Do you see any erosion or waterfall issues or concerns on your property? And how effective are your downspouts and other drainage pipes with the mitigating of water flow during heavy rainfalls. Deep gullies, washed out lawns or mulch, or standing water are all signs you're looking for and need to manage uphill. Do you see dirty water streaming down your driveway, pathways, or street? If yes, this is also a clear indicator of erosion problems. Proper drainage will also help minimize mosquitoes. Ultimately, good drainage conditions will maximize the use and reduce the effects of rainfall washout and ensure your landscape doesn't wash away or cause larger problems. Addressing your drainage issues early on may add to your budget and cost. However, the long-term results will be worth the investment. And depending on what you find, that will determine your potential solution options. If you have situations similar to those pictures on the slide, you may need to hire a professional to address and control severe water flow and soil erosion issues. You may also find that a much less expensive solution will work and not require the experts, only some good planning and some hard work. Based upon what erosion and water runoff issues or solutions you have, you can now determine the solutions that best fit your needs and budget. This is the time you'll determine if drainage control solutions are needed and where they can be placed. The photos here show some of the ways of managing erosion and runoff. The first photo shows how drain pipes direct water flow. These pipes will eventually be covered with soil. And the middle photo is a great example of terracing, retaining walls, rock stream bed for the water runoff on the left you see there, and shows what a professional can do with a slope. Know when to bring in the experts. Hardscaping projects often require moving heavy materials or equipment across your property and can be expensive. The third photo is an example of those using loose stones and river rocks to form a dry creek bed. The dry creek bed captures water and directs and diverts it away from lawns, driveways, and garden beds. Dry creeks, or sometimes known as riprap, can be done by professionals or do-it-yourselfers. When looking at your options, work to ensure that your solutions does not negatively impact your neighbor or the environment. Also, be sure that any work is HOA compliant if that applies to your property. Before you dig or have any construction done, know where your utilities are and call 811, which is dig safe. It's call 811, dig safe. Remember, Georgia's frost line is not very deep, so digging down a foot can uncover a number of things you do not want to damage. And continue to assess your slope. In Cobb County, slopes, woods, or compacted clay soil are often the norm. This presentation is focused on ways to manage slope and erosion, so knowing where your downspouts are and how they drain are critical to managing rain flow. Downspouts can be a huge source of erosion and water problems on our small lots with big roofs. Gutter discharge can be controlled by adding a simple plastic or concrete rain diverter or a flexible corrugated drain pipe that directs water away from the foundation. Diverters can be above ground or underground, but both will move the water more slowly over a longer discharge area. Gravel beds can also be used to mitigate the force of the discharge. You can see several examples in the pictures on the slide. Rain barrels are another excellent way of capturing water for reuse. You might consider attaching a soaker hose to the overflow valve to water nearby plants or beds. The best slope for us gardeners is one where the difference in height is no more than 1 to 2 feet of rise or fall for every 100 feet of garden space. Much more than that will require some soil moving, terracing, or walls. The maximum slope for wheelchair access is no more than 5 feet of rise per 100 feet of length. If considering a retaining wall, stone, masonry, or concrete materials will be more expensive than pressure-treated lumber, but the trade-off in the long-term durability versus the cost is worth it. It's easier to move wood materials up a slope, but wood walls only last about 15 years. Assessing your water situation, slopes often have dry soil when the water flows down slopes and quickly runs off or evaporates. As you inspect your property, note where your water sources are located. Where's the spigots? How many are there? Where are they? Spigots and irrigation lines are important in order to easily water plants while they are being established. For example, you may not want to grow vegetables without irrigation or easy hose access. You may want to purchase rain barrels to collect water to be used for watering plants as well. If you have an irrigation system, where are the zones and sprinkler heads or emitters? If you don't have one, do you need one? Or can you handle the area with a hose? A drip irrigation system is usually a good option as it provides a measured water supply that slowly waters your plants and allows absorption by the plants. Does it need updating or maintenance if you have one? Ideally, native plants or those plants that are drought tolerant and require little maintenance are the better options for your slope gardens. You've already assessed any erosion issues, but what kind of soil do you have? Noted earlier, it's a lot of clay here, typically in Cobb County. But it's important to know what you're dealing with and what additional measures are needed before selecting your plants. Soil on a slope tends to have a lower nutrient content than that on a flatter surface. So to be certain of the nutrients and pH levels, we recommend that you test your soil. A link to a short video on how to do a soil test will be sent after this presentation. Testing helps you know what's in your soil and what nutrients are needed. It's also important to examine your soil texture. Soil should be easily shoveled and it should crumble in your hands. I kind of chuckle. I've not experienced that. I hope you have. If it's super hard, like the hard clay we know and expect, you'll need to add organic matter. It'll also improve the soil structure, aeration, moisture retention, and soil fertility. Adding organic matter is always a good practice. It is sold as compost or soil amendments in the local gardening section of stores. You can also make your own. These are YouTube videos on the topic for more information. Let's get down to some planting options. Key considerations. Any good landscape plan is designed around safe access to water, buildings, pathways, utilities, and recreational areas. It should also be safe for you or whoever is maintaining your yard to work in. We'll talk hardscapes next, as it's usually one of the critical elements you'll need to address or plan for first as you work on a slope. Outside of having to address erosion issues, budget is typically the driving force in any update or changes to your slope landscape. As noted when clarifying your needs and expectations, prioritize your needs. Be realistic. Have a vision and enjoy the process. Hardscapes. They're probably the most important and costly items for working on a slope landscape. Hardscaping is simply the use of non-plant landscaping to create functional or decorative structures to improve safety, access, and appearance. Hardscapes are typically things like retaining walls, terraces, walkways, pathways, benches, or fences. Walls and paths help you define areas as well as allow you access to the various locations you want to address. Terraces are created by using a cut and fill method. Soil is removed to create a flat area, and that soil is then used to fill a low area. This typically requires significant effort, but it reduces erosion by breaking a long hillside slope into shorter steps or porches. A wide variety of materials can be used to create terraces: treated wood, bricks, rocks, or concrete blocks. Masonry and stone cost considerably more than wood materials, but will last longer. If you're trying to figure out which plants to grow, it'll take you time to install a retaining wall or a tiered garden that levels the land, and you can grow just about anything. Regardless of the materials, if terracing is done by the homeowner and not a professional, it is recommended that homeowners limit construction of their wall heights to just a foot or two high. This will ensure structural safety. Concrete blocks will indicate safe wall heights and instructions at your local supplier as well. Hardscaping is also used to control erosion or runoff issues, as well as providing a water supply. The use of a cloth or plastic erosion fabric coupled with the use of mulches that bind, such as pine needles or hay, will prevent weeds from sprouting on the newly planted slopes. If you do not have spigots or a water supply, the time to add them is at the beginning of your project. If you plan to run water or irrigation lines, again, be sure to check with local ordinance and remember to call 811 before you dig. Natural elements, such as large boulders or other visible stones, but not movable, can be used as focal points, as well as anchors for plants and shrubs. Boulders will stand the test of time, and they're easy to walk on. You can also see in the photo, how stone walls and walkways can be incorporated into your design. This is also the time to plan for any sheds or storage buildings, or work existing buildings into your plan. One could argue that the most successful gardeners are the ones who work with the landscape and not against it. Take advantage of what you already have and enhance it. If you have a large area, use that modular approach. Pull your ideas together based upon your earlier analysis and document what you want to do. Also, document if it'll require contractors, and also try to give a good estimate of how long you think it'll take. Knowing when to bring in the experts or contractors to do some of the heavy lifting and building will usually save you time, headache, and money in the long run. Installing irrigation or hardscaping will need coordination with contractors if you're not doing it on your own, in order to be able to determine what needs to be done first, along with any other supporting work. You don't have to have a formal plan, but it is helpful to have a rough sketch of the area and your ideas for the proposed hardscapes and plantings. This will help you communicate your vision and plan. As with all landscaping and garden projects, keeping maintenance as simple, it's always at the top of my mind and a prime consideration when planning. Lastly, review any HOA rules and determine if you need to get approval from your homeowners association before you embark on any landscape project. Planting your plants. As you probably figured out, not all plants are suitably grown on a slope. We strongly support the use of native plants whenever possible. Putting the right plant in the right spot will help you ensure your long-term satisfaction and success with the landscape. Also, make certain all plants in a given location have similar cultural requirements like water, sun, soil, and ease of maintenance. There's a wide variety of sun-loving or shade-loving native plants to choose from, depending upon your earlier assessment. We'll provide some plans on the next two slides for your consideration. You can also find a list of native plant resources at the UGA Extension website, under publications, and on the resources pages of the MGVOCC website. When possible, I like to use a variety of shrubs and flowers with an array of colors, aromas, and varying textures. I like something that's ready to engage my senses, and many of you may have something similar. But start with something simple and get more complex in your companion plantings with the coming seasons. Remember, build modules or small sections if gardening over a large area. Also, if you want color, plan it so you'll have it consistently throughout the season, or at least have some succession of plants in bloom in all the growing months. Determine how tall and wide plants will be at maturity and space them accordingly. You will find this info on the plant label. Read before buying. Place taller plants in the back of garden beds and shorter or creeping ones towards the front and the edges of your beds. If planting near structures, this is especially important. And if you remember nothing else, remember, read the plant label before buying. Shrub and ornamentals you may want to consider. This is just a small group. The guidelines for planting a native landscape are the same as those for any landscape. Select plants that are adapted well to the soil, local site conditions, and climate. As you probably figured out, not all plants are suitable to be grown on a slope. Listed here are specific plants that will not only grow well, but will also help reduce soil erosion. Planting on a slope, especially for large shrubs, it's best to dig deeper in the backside of the slope, pile that soil to the front so the shrub does not tip over. Plants vary tremendously in their need for moisture and their tolerance of moisture extremes. Northern eastern exposures, slopes and bottomland are normally moist, while southern and western exposures, ridge tops and rocky soils, tend to be dry. At the bottom of the slope, your plants will get a bit more water, so plan for your plants that like a bit more moisture in these garden beds like irises or sleet flag. All vegetables and fruits require full sun to grow properly. This means a minimum of 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight a day. Typically, a vegetable garden is planted on a relatively flat area, so consider constructing terraces, walls, or raised beds as needed. As with any garden, applying vegetable-friendly organic matter and other amendments to improve the quality and water-holding capacity of the soil is always recommended. Especially important for slope gardening is when planting your plants. Remember the varying heights of grown plants to ensure that the taller plants are farthest north and not blocking the sun for the lowest growing plants. I recommend you check out the UGA Extension publication to learn more about watering best practices, pest control, and managing your garden. Once you have thought through the issues and goals of your landscape, it's a great idea to sketch it out. Granted, this illustration was done by a professional, but do-it-yourselfers can get a copy of their plat, make a photocopy, and draw in the rest. It doesn't have to be exactly to scale. What you want is a general idea. That's all you need. You start by locating north. I then start drawing circles for large trees. Keep in mind that large trees cast big shadows, especially in the spring and fall. Ideally, the garden site should have no trees adjacent to the south side of the garden. Even if you don't have the time or dollars to develop a plan now, it greatly helps to take the time to get to know your landscape: sun, soil, water, and drainage. You can also note the sunny spots and shady spots and your lawn on these maps. Show on the map the plants you want and where they need to go. If you like, you can also hire a professional landscape to help you figure it out. But if you do, first get to know your yard. Professional landscapers don't live there, and you'll be the one to give them the most important information. It'll make their job easier and more effective if you do all of the above before they get there. Implement your plan. Prioritize what gets done first. Managing your budget, schedules, and any contractors for hardscapes, and that's to ensure quality materials and best safety practices are used. Address your soil needs based upon the results of your soil test and amend appropriately. You can always add compost or organic matter to improve your soil at any time. And this is where you can begin the plant purchase and growing of seeds. And for us here in Georgia, mulch is magic. The right mulch in the right environment, it can help retain moisture, which is especially important during our hot summer months, and for keeping the roots cooler and inhibiting weed growth. Mulch helps keeps the weeds out and the water in, especially in vegetable gardens. Mulch is essential if growing tomatoes. Mulch also helps keep spores from splashing up on the plant leaves, which helps prevent disease. All sorts of mulch are available. Some choices include pine bark mulch or pine bark mini nuggets. They're good. They somehow tend to wash away, though. Cypress and other shredded hardwood mulch. Pine straw is okay, but dangerous to walk on and very slippery when wet on a slope. And I would avoid grass clippings as much as possible because they are too fine and they prevent the water flow into the soil. They also may contain undesirable chemicals if the lawn was recently sprayed. Mulch can also be used as a ground cover for areas where plants and turf grass doesn't thrive or you don't want plants to grow. When applying your mulch, cover the soil around the plant with 2 to 3 inches of mulch. When applying mulch around a tree, leave a small space around the trunk instead of stacking it on the tree. And this will help avoid crown rot and create any habitat for rodents. The same is true along the foundation of your house and other structures. As with any gardening project, slope or not, you must maintain your garden. Keep watering and replenishing mulch as needed. When watering, allow your water to penetrate deeply. Slow wins that race. And check for unwanted diseases and insects. Some flowers, like roses, need to be deadheaded to maintain vigorous growth and keep blooming. Deadheading means removing the mature flower. I'm sure many of you know that. And you also want to pull weeds before they get big and out of hand. So to recap, what we just covered here in very quickly, 25 minutes, is you can do it with planning, time, and determination. Gardening on a slope can be challenging, if not downright difficult, but it's definitely worth the effort and not impossible. We provide an approach you can easily apply, whether your goals are to touch up your landscape, create a colorful and layered garden, or using plants and hardscapes to control water flows and any resulting erosion. You can address any erosion or safety issues and create a landscape and garden that will continue to give you pleasure in the seasons to come. We provide sound information for you to create an accessible, physically attractive landscape and to help the environment. When you get the deck, you'll have these resources for gardens. I highly recommend it. Many UGA publications are available on the UGA website, and they're very relevant to today's presentation. You can search and download them, and you're all welcome to visit or call our team at your local extension office. We do carry many of the print publications locally if you'd like to have them. And thanks so much for listening. And I hope you've learned something new today. And here's some additional references. There's multiple sites that we use to provide this information for both gardening and erosion control. And as noted, we will send you a list with the links after the presentation for further information and inspiration.
We hope that you will find our information informative and helpful. Thanks for watching, and please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.